Blessed Bridget, calmest the wind, bless this house and all of our kin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Majabella, and I am your Wednesday host for the Biophilic Alternative. And today I'm going to be discussing Imbolc and its old customs and new traditions that we have today. Imbolc is known by many names, and I'm sure that if y'all have seen the other videos on Planet Pathlings, that y'all know quite a few. Spin covered that quite well. And also Laura's also covered a topic that confused me for many years about the seasons versus the sabbats. So I hope that with all these combined videos that we're doing this week, that it helps clarify one of the hardest sabbats for me to actually understand in the very beginning of my practice. It didn't seem to make sense to me, and I couldn't figure out if the spring equinox was the first of spring, or Imbolc was the first of spring, or how it was supposed to play out. I have a much better understanding today of what the season is and what it brings. But there's other, although this holiday is predominantly Imbolc or Candlemas, and generally Saint Bridget or the Celtic goddess of Bridget are the dominant goddess figures of the holiday. But just as a clarification and a reminder that this is a truly pagan holiday, not just a Celtic holiday, because January 31st to February 2nd was Februaria, and that was dedicated to Vesta, the Shining One, goddess of the fire and hearth. February 2nd was the day that they honored Juno in Februata as the Virgin Mother of Mars. February 6th, the festival of Aphrodite, Greek goddess of love, beauty, creation, vegetables, and flowers, known to the Romans as Venus. February 7th to the 9th was the feast of the Old Greek, Roman, and Slavic goddess Artemis, Diana, or Dixua, and the Creatrix, midwife of birthing creatures of all kinds, protector of the young, and punisher of child abusers. February 12th was the festival of Diana as the protectress of wildlife. She also was a triple goddess of the moon, virgin, mother, and huntress. February 14th was the feast of Juno, queen of the heavens, consort of Jupiter, great mother goddess of earth, and the moon protectress of women. February 15th, she's back, the festival of love from Aphrodite. February 16th, celebration of Victoria, goddess of victory. February 26th, day of Hygeia, goddess of health and healing. The 27th of February, day of Selene, the mother aspect of the moon goddess, patroness of magic, intuition, and the tides of the ocean. So you can see that Imbolc season is truly a pagan holiday and also a Christian holiday, as in the realms of Candlemas. I should say more like Catholic, because not all of the Christians celebrate Candlemas. But February 2nd, generally speaking, is the Sabbat recognized as the midpoint between Yule, winter solstice, and the spring equinox of Ostara. It is one of the major Sabbats of the cross-quarter days, pairing with Imbolc, Beltane, Lunasa, and Samhain. These four Sabbats are recognized as the major Sabbats, while the remaining four, Yule, Ostara, Litha, Mabon, are considered the lesser Sabbats of the solstices and equinoxes. Cross-quarter days are the fire festivals, when bonfires usually would be seen um, throughout the night sky on the eve of the celebration. With Imbolc, however, being still in the dead of winter, the fires were generally in the hearth, and in the form of candles instead of a more public display and celebration. Sometimes communities would get together, but since the theme of the Sabbat is fertility, pregnancy, birthing, and the maiden of birthing, and it was more for the home-fed energy. The dominant goddess, bride, or Bridget, or Breed, she goes by many variations in her name, and her lover Don take the central stage in most European Celtic lineages. Imbolc's root word means both milk and cleansing, and this is the time that sheep, a very seasonal breeder, will start to engorge in milk for the impending birthing. So agriculturally speaking, this was a time of cleansing, purging, and purifying, just as a pregnant woman starts to do around 6 weeks or so before her impending birth. It is a natural instinct most of us recognize as nesting. So tradition would hold that spring cleaning started in January and preparing the house and the barn so that they were ready to concentrate on the farm labor that was to come, such as the birthing of the animals and the planting of the fields and getting ready to go outdoors and start working almost from sunup to sundown on getting their ground ready for the season. So the first sign of spring to them was not necessarily something sprouting outdoors, which most of us feel that that seems to be the first signs of spring. But really, the first signs of spring are when the animals start getting prepared to either mate or give birth. And that is what the sign of the milk coming into the lambs, into the sheep, were so important. That is the reason that is one of the first signs of spring for people who had herd type animals in their agriculture. Imbolc marked that time that cleansing was finished and they were ready for the Sabbat and the work of the spring when it arrived. The man of the household would make a bride doll out of a milk or butter churn handle and straw for rituals that would begin at sundown on February 1st. The women would make the bride bed for the dawn, her consort, and this symbolized the fertility of the land, the animals, and the household for the coming year. Milk in the sheep, bringing the first usual signs of spring, would also be a time to make some fresh butter for the Feast of Fire, welcoming and encouraging the sun's swift return. This was a time of the promise of spring, not necessarily spring itself. The rituals were to encourage early spring for the health of the family and livestock, and to start fresh stores of food growing. Planning and prepping would begin as the family could assess how well they fared the last year's harvest and how it helped them get through the current year's winter. Planning was essential to the future survival. Herbs for medicine, seeds for planting, root crops for cold storage, meats for salting, could all be evaluated for how much they would need to survive the next winter. This was imperative for their future survival. This was the time of the year also, a time of beginning fast after the feast of February 2nd, partly because if you're doing things by the rhythm of the earth, the barren time is a lean time, partly because the storage of meat and fats and salts and the heavier foods to generate heat in the body for the winter now needed to purge out. It is no coincidence that January and February are known as dieting seasons still today. It harkens back to an older instinct in us when we lived off the land, more hands-on. So this is essential for what they were doing. And February 2nd marked that midpoint, and they could assess by doing their divination work on their weather divining, which was also very central to this holiday. And that's where it's going to end up taking them, to whether they needed to cut back more severely on what they were eating so that they could make it through until the winter was over, if it was going to be 6 more weeks of winter, or if it was going to be an early spring, that they could be more lavish with what they were doing with what was left over. Fresh straw and hay were used at this time for beds in the house and the new birthing areas for the animals. This was also a very magical time. The rituals were all intended to please the goddess and encourage the sun god back. Divination was one of the important works done at this time as well. In particular, weather divining. Thus Groundhog Day is a throwback to the old European pagan practice of the bear goddess in Neolithic times. Hibernating animals of all kinds were used depending on the area. Bears, badgers, groundhogs, some of the more popular ones, they would wake up at this time, check the weather and conditions, and go back to sleep depending on what they encountered for this year. Most people today look at the budding trees, the plant life, growth, and feel that the Sabbats do not line up with the seasons. But the study of the more ancient traditions will show you that it is not what they were looking at the first signs of spring. More to the rhythms of the animal life told them more about the time. If February 2nd, the groundhog comes out and doesn't see his shadow, early spring will arrive. But if it is weather is sunny, he sees his shadow, he will return to his burrow and winter will stay 6 more weeks. Candlemas also stems from these beliefs, and they adapted as the time the baby Jesus was presented to the world. They marked the day by bringing beeswax candles to the church for blessing and then light the candles. Also, an old European folk song shows that it was the marking of the winter's midpoint as well, and used as a time of weather divining. In Old English, the song goes, "If Candlemas be fair and bright, winter has another flight. If Candlemas brings clouds and rain, winter will not come again." In Scotland, it was, "If Candlemas day is bright and clear, there will be 2 winters in the year." In Germany, "For the sun shines on the Candlemas day, so far will the snow swirl until May. For as the snow blows on Candlemas day, so far will the sun shine before May." In America, it was, "If the sun shines on Groundhog Day, half the fuel and half the hay." In Jewish law, the mother, after giving birth, would have to purify for 40 days. Then she would bring the baby to the temple to be named. Candlemas is 40 days from Christmas. And again, the themes are the same. Candles bringing back the light, purifying, and weather divining. So, even in traditions that are not necessarily pagan, the traditions are still the same. It is a purifying time. It is a time of doing certain divinations, even though I am sure that a lot of Catholics would not consider it divining, but they were. If they were a agricultural family living off the land, which most people were back in the day, even in early Christianity, or especially in early Christianity, they would be following the same things the pagans followed. It's not so much that the Christians borrowed it from the pagans or the pagans took things from the Christians. It's that we as people living and being allowed to survive on Mother Earth, we follow the rhythms of Earth and we kind of do the same things. That's why practices all over the world can develop and they seem to have a theme going on at the same time. Well, it's because it's universal to all humans to have to do the same things for survival. We all need the basic things for survival. Bridget, Saint Bridget, Vesta, Juno, and many more goddesses can be used at this time. But Brig, Bride, Bridget is some of the most common. She is a triple goddess. This is a cross-quarter day, and she is known as the goddess of crossroads. So divining is also a good thing to work out at this time. Ancients would have divined for the future, year ahead, but you can divine for any particular part you would like. Candle making would be a lovely thing to do at this time as well, especially out of beeswax. Soap making would also be because of the purification aspects of the holiday. Try making some fresh butter from some organic cream. All you need is a mason jar and some patience. There are some YouTube videos on it, so you can get all of the information that you need from there. But if you are pressed for time, a mixer or food processor will work as well. Find a pretty mold and it will be special for your dinner table on your celebration day. Other things that you can do on the feast day are root vegetables on the table with homemade bread would also be great, and also a lot of pancakes were also things that they would do for the feast of St. Bridget. Warm pudding as well would be another. Anything that you can think of that you would make from milk. Think about also making a bride's doll and a bride's bed, Bridget's cross, or a corn dolly. All these things are good things to do with children as well. So it's a holiday that includes the whole family. And after the feast comes the time of the impending waiting on spring to actually arrive, whether it be early or whether it be later. So fasting is also a great thing to start doing at this time for your internal purification as well. That is also why we go into a season of Lent if you're in the Christian faith before coming up to Easter. So fasting at this time is a natural process that the ancient people would have done, whether they were doing it willingly or not. Their food stores would have been low, so a lot of the fasting probably came from just that when the earth is barren, it's the lean times, and that's what we do. But your body will thank you for it as well. It's for your health, purifying, and contemplating spring's full arrival. And you can try your hand at weather prediction by observing the wildlife. All birds are gathering nesting materials. Are the squirrels out and about? What are the animals doing? Do they look like they're still in survival mode, or do they look like their mating season is coming and babies are on the way? Nature also giving you clues to life is coming back, to the dormant trees. Is there sprouts on the ground? There's lots of things that you can do to see if you can predict whether the weather is actually coming your way. There's also another thing that they did, and this one was something that I had completely forgotten about, and so I wanted to share that with y'all today too. And it was called, you could do one of two things, or you could do both things. There was called a blessing of the brought brie, and that one was during the day before Imbolc, the women of the house or the women of the grove should take a small piece of cloth, larger if it's for the entire grove, and lay it on a bush outside. During the night, as the goddess roams to bless the houses of her followers, she will pass by, touching and blessing the cloth. Collect the cloth in the morning and tear it into small pieces. These pieces of cloth, individually called a brat bree, should be distributed among the children and females of the household. The brat bree will give them protection throughout the year wherever they go. These pieces of cloth may be sewn in clothes, jackets of the children to ensure that they won't be lost. I thought that was a wonderful charm to do for your children and the women of your family. But then there was the other one that I thought was even a more powerful thing to do, because this item is called the Broktok Bree, and it is a large piece of cloth, such as a shawl, that Bridget will bless in the same fashion as the Brat Bree. Instead of torn into pieces on the next day, this cloth should be kept as a sacred relic and charged repeatedly year after year. The Brat breed can become quite powerful over time and can be used to help ensure safe childbirth and to cure sterility by placing it over the patient and asking for Bridget's help. It was once fairly standard equipment for the country midwives in Ireland. In addition to being used for human mothers during childbirth, it was also spread across the back of birthing cows to ensure the health of the calves, and an abundance of the milk supply, which would be imperative to keep the babies alive. So I thought those two traditions were just absolutely wonderful, and that is something I am going to be adding to this year's Imbolc celebration. So later on today, I'm going to be off looking for items that I'm going to use for those two things. I just think that was absolutely fantastic. To make these are all great Imbolc Candlemas Groundhog Day activities, and to make it your own for your own area. And of course, for those down under, this is Llamas or Lunasa. So I wanted to wish them a happy first harvest to all of them down below the equator as well. But here's wishing y'all all a beautiful ritual of candlelight, and may your future year be bright, and a quick end to winter's blight, and rejoice that the Mother Earth is receiving her daughter back in her arms again, because I think a lot of people forget that this is the time when Persephone comes back to Demeter, and the mother is happy again that she has her child back in her arms. So I just want to wish y'all a very blessed Imbolc coming up, and I hope y'all try some of these activities to add to your Imbolc blessings. And y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.
Blessed Bridget, calmest thou wind, bless this house and all of our kin. Bless this house and all of our kin. Protect this house and all